order of business is to approve the minutes from our meeting in November, our November meeting, packet circulated minutes. Does anyone have any additions, deletions, corrections? Is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Joe, second?
I'll second.
By Dave, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
So the third and fourth items would be the reports of the subcommittees and communications update, and I don't know new items either.
Okay, it's not really communications, but I can update people on our sort of outreach, community outreach. We gave a presentation last week to the New Scotland Historical Society on the MREF 250. You recall, I think at our October meeting it was, that we decided that we would try to reach out to our respective historical associations and other sort of cultural institutions in our respective jurisdictions, and seek an opportunity to tell our story, to get the word out there, particularly with people that sort of have an interest at the outset of these types of activities. Our first one was last week in New Scotland. It was a snowy night in New Scotland, but I was really impressed with the turnout. Mark attended, Jack McInerney attended, and it was quite a good turnout, much more than I expected. Just as an aside, I don't know that they keep regular hours, but if anyone has the opportunity to visit the facility out there, it's in New Salem, I was so impressed. So impressed. First of all, impressed with the organization as a whole. They were so diligent in preparations for this presentation. Secondly, they have a little facility, I should say, a little small facility there that is just so well done. It's almost to like professional standards in terms of the way it's curated. They have permanent exhibits and revolving exhibits, and then also the way they had their archival materials so well organized. And, I've been to historical societies where things are kind of thrown in a box and in a closet. So kudos to the New Scotland group. And kudos for them to putting together a really good crowd on organizing Clement night. But we gave the presentation. We prepared a PowerPoint, which I think will serve as a template, and some very good questions, very good comments coming up. So I think that was time well spent. I'll be giving a similar, slightly shorter presentation this Thursday to the Historic Altamont group, which sort of serves as the Historic Society in the village of Altamont. I've also spoken to a town historian in Bethlehem and asked for the opportunity to present to their organization, as well as the Guilderland Historical Society. So, and again, I would urge everybody within your respective jurisdictions, if you could take the initiative. Doesn't mean you have to make the presentation, although it would be great. Hopefully the template is such that any one of us can give it, but don't feel that you need to make the presentation. I'm happy to participate in any or all at once, but we would ask your help in sort of making the contacts and facilitating the opportunity.
Albany Public Library is interested. It'll help with the template because they weren't quite sure for this newsletter, but there is interest there, so I think if I have something even more solid, I can talk to them.
Okay.
And they also made a recommendation. There's a senior
Society and people who were historically inclined in New Scotland to put a bug in the ear of the New Scotland Town Board and Supervisor that, you know, oh, by the way, the town of Gilderland has established its own official 250 commission. So, and we certainly, you know, we want to be a facilitator of that. So we urge the folks in the Historical Society to take the initiative and try to get something official in Scotland. You know, so, and it's going to be, it'll be a mixed bag, right? Some places the Historical Society will take the lead, other places the towns themselves. That's fine.
Just one last thing as an aside, this is kind of new business, but we just talk about it now so I don't forget, but at the end of the meeting, I thought about this, at the end of the meeting, I was having a discussion with the New Scotland, the Historical Society, and talking about keeping in touch, and I realized that we don't have should we have, since our commission is lengthy, it's going to be 8 years, should we have some type of cards or identification that we can have for ourselves? I kind of hate that, but at the same token, it's convenient because here I'm fumbling in my phone and trying to put this guy's name in my phone and not remember who it's going to be anyway, but if we did have a card identifying ourselves, it just might be a good idea as we move forward, and it's honest,
I think that's
I think we should probably.
You can get those.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
That's it. I'm done. I won't talk about something.
Ravenna Quinlan's, right now, we're looking out for our Historical Society. I've got April, October, November, I think maybe in October, we might go do something.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
And we have, and I have had conversations with the supervisor. It's just difficult to get the board engaged.
Okay.
Dealing with a lot of stuff.
And then we'll find it. And again, I think when we did the presentation, we did it so that it could be slightly tweaked to, like, for instance, if you look at the New Scotland one, the introduction is, you know, people like to be talked, people like to hear about themselves or their places. So it started with a focus on, you know, something that was relevant in New Scotland to the revolution. So that's where where they work together so that, you know, like for instance, if we do one in Ravenna Quinlan's in October, Joe, you and I can work together.
Yeah.
We can, you know, find some interesting, very, you know, hyper local angles.
Yeah, and John Bonifay has been doing a lot of work. We actually just submitted a request for a grant for a new historic bunker for a site that was on Route 144 in Queens, where there was actually an encampment where they were built the barracks. We're waiting to hear about that. So maybe I'll tie it all in. It'd be nice if we had a sign at the time, but I don't know.
Can, will we set the presentation? Is that something that we can
Yes.
share with you?
Yes, I said I was gonna send it to you and I didn't, but I definitely will.
I know we had talked last time about, with regard to outreach to local leaders, maybe a set of talking points or general themes, you know, to make sure we're kind of sharing a consistent message. Is that something, is that through the template that you talked about?
It's in the presentation,
Okay.
but when I send it around, I'll pull that out and highlight that.
Okay,
That's-
yeah, that'd be perfect.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what term we use, pillars or themes, you know. Maybe I could use pillars and themes. Yeah, because we remember at one of our, we talked about, we want to be talking off the same page.
Yeah.
We want to have, you know, different conversations and, you know, unique to individual jurisdictions, but we also want to make sure we're singing off the common song sheet.
Under, I was gonna put under new business, but it might be community outreach, next week, Tuesday the 17th, so literally next week, Discover Albany's hosting their cultural heritage, just meeting at 11 a.m., where I just kind of put out an email to our local sites like Skyline Ranch and Cherry Hill, but we also get like the Albany Symphony and folks like that. And so we're meeting at the Albany Institute, we're gonna meet the new head of the Albany Institute. So I apologize, that's at 10 a.m., so like 10 to
wanna make. As I said, when we requested the money, it was sort of broken out as, you know, we want sort of a part-time person to do a lot of the work with this, we want marketing, we want this. They all just sort of put it together in one line, so we're gonna have to talk to the county executive about that. We're doing that next week. As for this year's budget, I think the period, today is the 10th. The budget expenditure might be close for this year, it might be early next week. In any event, of the $15,000 that we were allocated, we spent about $10,000. And really any of the bigger items, let me rephrase that. Any of the other stuff that we really want to do, we probably couldn't get for $5,000. So we sort of got everything that we sort of envisioned that we would need up to $10,000. That includes something you suggested last meeting, apparel, you know, shirts, ball caps, even got some custom mugs with the branding on there. We've got that logo board.
That look good.
You know, an easel, 'cause you always need one of those. Tent, table cover, tables and chairs, stickers, I haven't got those yet, but they're still working. Norman Skill pins, I ordered, I think like 500 of those or something. So those, the county is sort of setting that up and everything should be good with that, so. That was actually, those pins were actually the biggest expense of all. Because obviously they're beautiful and
Nice.
Yeah.
so, you know, overall, considering we really only got going off the ground early this year, I think, you know, getting all those items, spending most of the money, I think was a good result. So,
Terrific.
So now that we have all that stuff, I think not only for talks, it's also looking for those tabling opportunities.
yeah, and I think we're gonna have to talk also to the county executives team about, sort of where we keep all this stuff to deploy it, and who can be in charge of this kind of thing. Full disclosure, right now, it's all just kind of sitting in my office. You know. But, you know, that's something I think we'll talk about with their team next week.
Okay.
You can't set up your laptop on it and just.
It's giant tent thing.
Right there.
I think this is a good spot, particularly since this is our last meeting of our first year, to really give a shout out and special acknowledgement to Patrick for doing just a tremendous job. I was thinking about the other day, we never officially asked you, we never officially assigned you. It's not in our province to assign you. You just sort of took the ball and the initiative, and I think you're doing just a tremendous job. Which is that's not my way of saying, we're not committed to finding you help.
Yeah.
But we do very much, I think I speak for everybody, that we really do appreciate not just the amount of work, but the quality of the work that you
Thank you.
very much appreciate. Patrick did mention we have a meeting scheduled next week with Cameron Sagan from the County Executive's Office. Certainly put the invite out to anyone who wants to participate. You should probably specifically participate since you're this appointee.
They did reach out to me, a few months ago, I don't know all the names of my Danish staff, and I did respond, but then I never got back, so.
Okay. There is a specific initiative that I wanted to run by them before but we'll discuss it at this meeting under new business. But also, it's just an opportunity to, you know, touch base with them, bring them up to speed, you know, so that we keep the lines of communication open, which is important. Going down the list, I apologize, I realized yesterday that I hadn't spoken to Devin Lander, the state historian, so I did reach out to him yesterday, send him an email. The regional group that is both the county commissions in New York, as well as some from western Massachusetts and I believe western Connecticut and Vermont, had a meeting in October. I wanted to touch base with Devin to get an update on that, because I was not able to participate. I was invited, but I couldn't participate. To see where that is, and also was looking
brings back to, can we add that meeting of the other local commissions, Schenectady, or?
Yes.
If we recall, maybe it's, if his schedule permits, he did verbally agree to this, if you remember. Maybe, we could invite him to our first meeting of 2025, because he did say he would be more than happy to meet with us a few times a year.
We should always invite, but I think we have to be cognizant, he has a big jurisdiction to cover, you know, so.
But let him tell us now.
Okay. Yeah, we actually make our point, we should kind of consider it an exhibition.
On that point, I don't know if it's under the same umbrella, or it should be, you know, separate business. With regard to the Ken Burns piece, I know we had talked about, potentially it sounded like WHT or somebody was looking at, potentially a or, you know, local.
A screening.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, but were they talking about, some sort of local, or potentially local special, or so? I
Yes,
thought we talked, okay.
yes.
So is that, the outreach that you have is under that, is it under that same umbrella, or, I mentioned because I don't know the runway on some of those discussions, and I think we've had some good conversations on, you know, potential ideas or suggestions for them to look at, and, you know, so I didn't know if we needed to do any proactive follow-up.
Well, follow-up, yes. We sort of planted seeds,
Okay.
on an initial call with Devin, myself, you know, like Saratoga County, sorry,
Lauren Roberts?
Lauren Roberts, and the programming manager from WWHD.
Okay.
And I did make a pitch for Battle of Normanskill, and I did make a pitch for this notion of, you know, Destination Albany, right? And notion of the home front, right? Things that were happening away from the battlefields that were still open. So I kind of put it out there, but to your point about in follow-up, you know, obviously we believe any one of those is worthy of being touched on, in special. I'm actually working on an article, and the more I work on it, the more I believe the point, which is, you know, and I think Paul said this at one of our earlier meetings, is we become so battle-centric, specific battles. But, you know, I've been studying just, you know, what Albany, Schenectady, the countryside, what the situation was in the weeks before the battles, and just how, you know, what a crazy time that was locally. And just the anxiety and the fear, and literally it would go, it was on a knife's edge, depending on results of things that happened on the northern front and the western front, whether the countryside here was going to align with the Patriots or the British. And it was, you know, it's like, literally, it was a roller coaster. And that also highlights, and I think Aaron made this point, the significance of the Battle of Normanskill was primarily as a morale booster. And then that followed immediately by the news from Oriskany and Stanley's in keeping the Patriots in the game, so to speak. And that enabled General Gates to basically flood the zone with militia, right? And that's what encircled Burgoyne. There was just, you know, by the time it got to the battle, we had such a numerical advantage, which was not the case early on, right? And that was a function of the militia responding, which they didn't necessarily, I guess they had to do, but it was very much an open question as to whether they would. Just as an example, or a history lesson, or just as an example, in the town of Bern, there was a sub-unit, a local militia unit, and there were about 90-some members, 70-some aligned with the king, and 22 aligned with the Patriots, you know, before this, right? So it's these things that are not necessarily to the core of the, you know, the day of the big battle are you know, very, very important. And a lot of that happened here.
Yeah, and, you know, that's good history, right? You know, it's being able to fill in and explain gaps in between those big events, right? You know, it's anytime, at least speaking for myself, like preaching to the choir, you know, reading biographies, especially if they're, you know, less deep, you know, it's much more, you know, this happened, and then this happened, and you're like, you know, these are people who, you know, were awake 16 plus hours a day, and they had families and lives and neighbors, and just the day-to-day of, you know, their lives, how it's related, but also not related to whatever these big events are. And so, yeah, being able to fill in those gaps with more notable things like Golden Scale, but then also that, you know, those kind of personal stories and, you know, what was it like in those days, in those weeks, in those months, you know, it's an opportunity at our local level, you know, to be able to kind of fill in those gaps or that space in between, you know, the chronology points, you know, that we might learn in school or elsewhere.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Good. Moving on, I don't know if Jack had an update on the Knox commemoration of the Henry Knox expedition. Just a reminder, we have a role and participate to be determined in the Albany portion of that process, which I recall is next December here at the Schuyler Mansion. I did reach out to the supervisor in the town of Knox, just because there's a potential angle there. I mean, obviously nothing happened there. It was relevant. But there is, I think we mentioned this, there's a little historical question as to whether the town of Knox is named for Henry Knox or John Knox, the Scottish religious reformer. And I challenged Supervisor Pretorian, who's also a historian, I said, maybe between now and then we can get to the bottom of that question and answer it definitively. But in any event, he is interested and will be working with the Historical Society in Knox to come up with some angle so that they can participate in whatever meeting next year. So there's that. Before we forget, Jack has mentioned, I guess it's sort of new business, but we hadn't mentioned it before, the diary of I forget his rank, but Selkirk, James Selkirk, who obviously was the founder of they named the village, is Selkirk a village? Or Hamilton?
Sort of an area.
Yes.
It's Selkirk.
So, you know, legal sense.
And they named it for him. But apparently there is a diary. Jack just was telling me the significance of it is it's unusual to have a non-officer, a relic of a non-officer keeping a diary from that time period. It's also interesting because he served in a very unique and noted regiment called Congress's Own, which was raised from sympathetic people in Canada who were sympathetic to our cause, which kind of touches on what we said before. The assumption when General Schuyler put together the Army of Invasion to go into Canada, the assumption was that we would be greeted with open arms, and that the local indigenous population would join us in antipathy towards the crown. Didn't happen. In fact, the majority was on the other side. So again, sort of the battle of hearts and minds, and we lost that one, and we wound up losing that campaign in a very significant way. Again, highlighting the importance of the factors behind the scenes. But James Selkirk has this diary, and apparently it's in English, but they're looking to transcribe it in a way that could be made meaningful and show. And Jack suggested perhaps we could take it on as an initiative to support financially. I think at this point if that's something, we're going to open it to discussion.
Well, I had a question about some of these projects started writing like some of the things that we know, and I think even when we did the application, so we know tall shifts, WMHT, Battle of Normanskill, Knox Cannon. So we kind of, I don't know if there's any others, but we know for sure those are the ones that keep coming up. And then I guess I wonder about some of these other things in the diary, instead of the artists.
Well, I'm kind of envisioning a line item, I mean, some of the initiatives you mentioned were sort of our initiatives, or our,
Yeah.
but I'm also thinking of a grouping of, grants, an umbrella grant that we would give to local organizations or what have you. And put have the initiative come from them. We did set up a budget committee. The budget committee has not met. Now that we have, what appears to be a solid appropriation, I think we should convene the budget committee, which we'll do, I'll commit to doing that ahead of our January meeting. And specifically task the budget committee with coming up with a framework to present back to us in terms of the budget for the next coming year. And I think what I'll suggest to the budget committee is that we have a line item for local initiatives and local grants.
Are you envisioning that for 2026?
Well, they probably need the funding, because I would think 2026 is when some folks are thinking of.
The only reason I ask is because, 50,000 sounds like a big number, but.
Yeah,
that's-
it's not, yeah.
And we didn't list it as one of the things that we would be focused on in maybe less.
Right. I mean, this could be honestly just a, collaboration with the majority of the legislature to say, hey, grant program for,
Right.
I wonder if it could be some, so Common Roots or Brew Roots of all things, but they have a nonprofit that they do like the rolling mini grants, which don't have a deadline necessarily, and I think it's only up to 500. But, that's also a possibility too, if it is these mini grants, it gives us a little more flexibility.
It could also be an impetus for setting up a structure to facilitate supplemental financial support for our commission from the private sector. Because certainly we will come up, we will be presented with opportunities throughout the course of the year that we didn't highlight in making our budget request in October, right? So if we do have, if that 50,000 can be supplemented with, if we take the initiative and say, well, let's try to raise X, then that gives us, a pot to play with that is more flexible.
My guess is, there's going to be or can be a decent amount of overlap between that, some sort of creative economy application structure and, some of the initiatives that we've already talked about. Beyond Patrick's great work, in our volunteer effort, we don't have a staff of doers, right? And, kind of translating our focus and interest in some of these topics into a tangible product or tangible effort. I think an application process like that, whether it's, so we're not always only tapping into Discover Albany, which, I would be perfectly fine with, but, that others would be, but it checks off, obviously, also the box of, economic development or economic activity, side of our efforts. So I think, regardless of whether we're looking at this diary as a 2025 opportunity to directly support or not, I think creating, kind of an application structure like that for us to tap into, my guess is you're familiar with those folks to be able, for us to be at a point saying, hey, we want to see what's out there, we want to try to facilitate something. If we have that internal structure and say, yeah, we see a creative mind need here with a short-term, whatever it may be. It was a little bit rambling, but I think that's useful regardless of whether or not, the diary piece is realistic for 2025.
Right. So I think to summarize,
Thank you.
not just your point, but the other points that have been made, and to report back to County Historian McEnany on this particular point is, and supporting the efforts to make the diary more readily accessible. That said, we would like to do it according to a process that we're going to set up in the new year to facilitate that type of support and support for similar type initiatives. Is that
It was much more succinct.
If
If I talk, if I
This is
speak long
unusual
enough,
for me.
usually, it's out there.
Yeah, well, unusual for me because I didn't pair some ridiculous historic anecdote. Good, so the budget committee, we will meet before our next commission meeting. In terms of that process, Maeve, I think we would be relying on you, your expertise in how to set up that process.
I can talk about it just as somebody who's applied for grants, and I could be like, this one was arduous, this one was easy.
I mean, we don't want it to be complicated.
No, no.
But we do want there to be process.
And some of that will be subject to how the Friends group ultimately gets set up, which is something I'm still working on. You know, I have to talk to attorneys about. So for county grant, it'd be maybe more of a robust RFP process versus, you know, something else.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be subject to that.
And I think also, if I'm able, you know, kind of just rough ideas on, you know, prices as well. I mean, you know, these little mini, you know, creative economy, creative mind, you know, you'd like someone to use their artistic and creative expertise to help support us, you know, or create this thing. I have no idea, you know, obviously so much of that's gonna be dependent on, you know, scale and form, but I have no idea what that market looks like, and so I think that
It's
might be
New York,
helpful.
a lot of our historical, they've graphed those mini grants, so I could take a look at what they've done.
Kind of like going rates of that type of work. I selfishly and personally, I have no idea
Yeah.
what that is, so that might be helpful.
Yeah, I'll take a look at what because they'll do for, they do mini grants, rolling grants, bigger, so they have a bunch of different levels.
Okay, and in addition to initiatives that would be either our own or from the community that we would fund through this process, but with our money or our appropriation or our supplemented appropriation. I think there's another process, a role that we can play within the county to devise initiatives and further them, lobby them, in which the actual expense is in the ordinary course of county business, of which there's an angle or a twist that, you know, achieves one of our purposes. And I have two specific items that I'd like to raise. I know we have a program committee as well, but I'll take, apart from protocol, just let's consider this a program initiative to be discussed as a committee of the whole. Because I do want to raise them with us before I would raise them with the county executive staff next week. Because if we do align behind at least one of them, it's something that would need to be gotten after fairly quickly. And just by way of background, from the community input from New Scotland session last week, one of the things that they seemed most interested in having us do is education. Education broadly for the whole community, but specifically for children. And you know, we've talked about that as well. I did a little bit of research, and the notion is to facilitate some sort of summer history camp for Albany County youth, focused on the themes that we're tasked with. And the other bit of background is under County Executive McCoy's leadership, there's been a real enhancement of the programs of the County Department of Parks and Recreation. There's a new commissioner. It's more robust. It's more active. I would, frankly, as a citizen, I was not aware of county recreation the staff, they set up these recreation things. This idea would be to have a slight twist on that, and in addition to physical recreation, that there would be cultural education components to the summer program that is administered each year by the Department of Parks and Recreation. And in doing research, there's actually quite a bit of precedent for this. There's a couple of what are called specifically history camps, and I'll send around the links to, there's one, done in Orlando, there's one in Tampa. Interesting, I don't usually think of Orlando and Tampa as being history-rich regions, but there's a really cool one which I have information on, I can circulate, down in, of course, Virginia. Let's see. Which one is this? Oh, this one is, I have two copies.
What age group are the camps geared towards?
Anywhere from, I think, well, my kids did, so 5 to 18.
One of the things that the Scotland Historical Society kind of advised us, and there were a few educators there, that we probably should gear our educational opportunities more towards elementary school students as opposed to the older kids. They said there, first of all, makes sense, but they said those are the kids that are gonna enjoy it and eat it up more than the older kids.
I think the county, at least the county recreation programs sort of run the gamut, any age within school age. Locally, there's precedent. The State Museum had a program that was similar to this. And it's interesting, you go online and they have examples from 2008 and 2014, and it's completely unclear as to whether the program is still in operation. So that was a bit frustrating.
They've been re-energized in the past couple months, so it's definitely worth re-engaging
Okay.
with their education department.
Okay. And that's good. And I guess my point is, we don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel if it doesn't need to be reinvented, if there's something that's already in existence that sort of meets the need. I would point out, so I don't know if that program still exists or not. I know it's not specifically geared towards colonial or revolutionary topics. And also, it's definitely housed at the State Museum. One of the benefits of the Albany County recreation program is there is no sort of central Albany County park, right? So the programs are done all throughout the county, right? They have one that will be in Cohoes and one that will be in Bethlehem and one that will be in New Scotland. So it's bringing the programs to the people as opposed to expecting parents to, bring their kids every day back to downtown Albany, which would be difficult. Also, the Albany Institute of History and Art has a program. Again, it's campus-based at their facility, but it's art. It's focused it's great. It looks like a great program, but it's just art. So the Institute of History and Art does something in art. They don't do anything in terms of history.
I don't think they do it anymore, but Temper Mansion, and I think they partnered with Underground Railroad, but they would work with Hartman Archaeology, and they would do an archaeology specific camp.
So that's the idea, is to sort of plant the seed with the program people at the county, saying you're doing such a great job, and it's true, you're doing such a great job of expanding the programming in the recreation area. Can we help you do something similar in the cultural historical side, right? Obviously, they're gonna, if they say, oh yeah, that sounds great, but the question is who, right? So, I think it's incumbent on us to, if this is something we're interested in, we've got to be able to say, well, we can help, right? We can either facilitate with our cultural partners, our historical societies, ourselves, right? I was actually thinking, you give a session on political memorabilia that some kids would really like, right? So I just wanted, we've got to be prepared to
Is
put
this
our,
something I could bring up to that group next week? Would that be confident enough for that?
again, it's if we think it's something that's worth something that you could start very modestly, right? I have an example here from Warren County, Ohio, and it's just 1 week, and it's a limited amount of programming, and we can kind of see how that goes, and then again, we're here for 8 years, so if it works, we can build on it, we can expand it. I just think it gets right to the core of it, and it's piggybacking on something that's already in existence and is already kind of growing and looking to grow, right? So we're sort of inserting ourselves into something that's already kind of on track.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that, between time and structure, whatever, a day or something that fits into an existing program that might make sense just for, easy pass. And then I know we, appropriately don't want to, over-focus on, 2026, but as a summer camp and, July 2026 being, 250th birthday, quote unquote, maybe there's organic interest or enough organic interest outside of, potential programmatic offerings that we could, work on that, there might be kind of an easy pathway to get into, that's organic as well, rather than just kind of recognizing that this would, or, convincing other people that they would be interested in this, once we put something together and offer it, maybe there's enough kind of natural organic interest given the time.
That's a good point. Although I worry about organic interest in the whole 250 celebration, nationwide. It just doesn't seem to be that same sort of, and we talked about that in this conference, our society, not just in politics, but in media and so many culture, it's so fragmented now compared to the last time we did this, in which, you got Walter Cronkite to say it, everybody knew it, and everybody got behind it, we all did the same thing together, in the same places. I mean, today, none of that framework exists, right? So I do worry about, people organically or naturally just sort of coming to know about this. Plus, it's just 250 is not as big in the mind as 200 was. But I'm old enough to remember the bicentennial, so I kind of use that as sort of the template, which is not really fair given to the people in the mind.
I mean, it was definitely a different time. We were just faced with it last year. We did the Quaidman's 350th, Quaidman's 300th. We had 10,000 people in the middle of the town. We had a parade that lasted 2.5 hours. Last year, we had a parade that lasted a half hour. And just to get the community out for it, the community support, and the business support, it was not easy.
It's not the same. I mean,
No, it's not the same.
and people don't do things quickly. Community,
Yeah.
Kiwanis doesn't, things that,
Well, like organizations, we had, at the 300, we had 25 organizations in town. I mean, the Rotary and all of these groups. I think we only have 1 or 2 left.
it's definitely a change.
Yeah, the
It's
amount of
definitely a
people that
change.
participate. And Patrick's involved with the Knights at Korea. The Knights back in that day had 200 members. How many members do they have?
Honestly, I can tell.
Not too much.
I mean, I'm a member and I'm not active, so.
Well, and again, that highlights another point that was raised last week, which is
Yeah.
the one thing that is not just constant, that remains, but is actually intensified and larger, is kids' activities and specifically kids' sports, right?
Yeah.
Which, becomes our church dealt with it. Like, how do we compete against Sunday morning soccer?
Yeah.
You can't.
I know.
Because that's where the parents are gonna go, because that's so vitally important, which, we should take note of that, right? Those are the few things that people still do,
But how do you reach them?
How do you reach
How do you reach them?
Right, so we gotta figure out, we gotta be creative in how we make our message piggyback on those things that still resonate.
You're saying we need to sponsor a little league team?
Perhaps.
A little.
I was thinking more like trucks.
Themed a little bit. They play in Revolutionary War costumes.
Yeah.
Little twins in a
I know
row.
that. It is a little
think unless there's objections, I feel like I'll sort of frame up the issue a little tighter and raise it next week with the county executive's office and see if there's an interest. Obviously, if they say, for whatever reason, it can't be done, we don't wanna do it, or, you know, there's nothing we can do to make it happen, but I do think it's a good idea, and I think we might be able to plant and nourish a seed, we might be able to get, you know, something to show for it. Did you have it?
No.
Okay. The second, again, along the lines of things that we don't necessarily have to pay for, but that we could put insert ourselves in and get a bit of an MREP 250 stamp on things is, and I noted it when I actually was coming into the county from Schenectady, up on Carmen Road in Altamont, and the new signs that the county has put up, we're now entering the Purple Heart County. I don't know if they have them in the colony, but they're I think in all of them, not all of them, not pronounced, but, and they're nice signs, and they're specifically connected to that Purple Heart initiative, which is really awesome. I think this MREP 250 is an opportunity to perhaps change that. And you know, and perhaps challenge the county, DPW, and this may be a legislative initiative, but you know, it's something that we'd like to get behind if we do it, to take a look at, you know, our inventory, you know, how and why do we name things? And is there an opportunity to instill and develop and foster a greater historic consciousness in the naming of our landmarks? Just
I think we want to make sure that we want public input as well, because I think people right now panic at the idea of naming anything historical, and
that's right.
so that there would have to be some kind of like pitch as well, but we would hear from the community what they want to see.
That's a good point. And maybe even, you know, at the outset, stay away from certain, you know, like, I don't know, you say not to name it after people, but that's kind of limiting, but your point is at least well taken. We don't want to step into a,
I think you just wanna be careful with who's indigenous names too,
well, and beyond, it's broader than just that. I mean, the community of what matters.
Yeah.
Right, because if you don't take it into account and you misstep, you know, you can kill the initiative. So that's just, that second one, let's ponder that a little bit. Think about, you know, what's the situation in your respective neck of the woods, is it, you know, one of the things that, you know, just from your historical perspective, boy, it would be great if that sort of no-name, numbered roadway is actually known as the, you know, Major General James Selkirk Parkway instead of,
Yeah, the city of Albany's been doing like the honorary naming under our street signs.
yeah,
So it's like you don't erase the name of the historical, but then underneath, and for them it'll be a significant person in the community, it is the Father Young honorary naming.
yeah,
So I wonder if even that's a way, it's like, well, we're not getting rid of
that's right, that's right. And also, like, the towns, in town, you know, they name things, but the naming doesn't really take. They'll put a sign, like Carmen Road is the Major Todd Young apartment, but it was just to pass the resolution, they put one sign up, and then they don't really follow through on. Yeah, so let's put that on the burner to be ruminated upon, and if we do think there's potential there, I think the place to take it to would be county DPW, and just say, you know, what do you guys think? They have a sign shop, I mean, this is not a major expense, right? It would just mean some process and some valid, group would need to work on the content, and come up with a process and maybe produce some results.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a worthy topic, and I think, you know, this entity seems like the appropriate place to have that discussion, you know, to figure out, is there a path that we can take, you know, recognizing that there's a lot of, you know, I think inherent challenges with that, but is there a path, and if so, what does that path look like, and, you predisposed to liking that type of thing. You know, and so I think appropriately, you know, I think that's an appropriate discussion, an appropriate thing for this body to discuss, to see if that makes sense, and if so, you know, what those paths forward look like.
Good. Okay, come to the end of, my new initiatives. Do we have any other items that you'd like to discuss?
Next meeting.
Next meeting. Let's, if we can, could I suggest we give ourselves a little more time, so that we can have the budget committee meet substantively beforehand, and not try to do it during the holidays? Does that work if we go a little later than we usually do in January?
14th, first.
I'm thinking the 21st. Is that an operation?
21st probably would work for me, but that's executive budget release date.
Okay, well, we want it to work, right? So,
But don't let me be the barrier.
how about the 22nd?
It's probably works for me. But that week is probably not great for me, but
Okay.
but that's, again, if that works best for others, don't schedule around me and I'll make it if I need to. But I want to be honest with myself.
Why don't we, well, we know you can't do the 21st, so let's, how about the 22nd? Does that work for you, Ann?
Yes.
Joe, do you have a problem with that? Mark?
Good right now.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. And we don't have a location, do we?
No, just want to do the county building.
Let's tentatively say the county building, but let's try between now and the next couple of days to see if we can find a suitable historic setting.
Okay.
We don't have to do it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Did you say the 21st?
the 22nd.
22nd.